Cole Dawson saw her through the dying light, a woman dragging timber through snow, alone, no help coming. He pulled his horse to a stop on the ridge above her claim. His children sat behind him, Hope's small arms wrapped around his waist. Tommy perched on the saddle horn. The November wind cut through their coats, carrying the smell of pine and coming snow. "Papa, why's she all alone?" Hope's voice was small against the wind. Cole didn't answer right away. He watched the woman wrestle a log twice her length through knee-deep snow. She didn't look up, didn't pause, just kept pulling, breath visible in the cold air, her dark dress soaked to the knees. Behind her stood half a cabin. Walls rose to shoulder height on three sides. No roof, no door. Winter was closing in fast, and she was racing the season with nothing but determination and a body that would break before her will did. Tommy shifted in the saddle. "Can we help her? Papa?" Cole recognized that look on her face. He'd worn it himself 2 winters back, after they'd buried Sarah. Grief worn like armor. The kind of stubborn that said the world could go to hell. But she'd finish what she started or die trying. "Some folks don't know how to ask, son," Cole said quietly. The woman finally stopped. One hand pressed to her lower back. She straightened slowly, like every bone hurt. Then she bent again, grabbed the rope, and pulled. "Out here, you pull your own weight or the land buries you." That's what Cole's father used to say. But watching her now, Cole wondered if pulling your own weight meant you had to do it alone. Hope tugged his coat. "She looks cold. Papa." "She is, darling. Then we should help." Cole looked at the darkening sky, at the woman below, still pulling, at the half-built cabin that wouldn't shelter anyone when the real storms came. He turned his horse toward home, but he kept looking back. That night, lying in bed, he couldn't sleep. The image stayed with him, that woman in the snow, refusing to break. He knew that determination. He'd lived it. After Sarah died, he'd worked himself near to death just to avoid the silence. Somewhere in the darkness, he made a decision. Cole returned at dawn with rope, tools, and no invitation. The woman was already working. She turned when she heard his horse, one hand moving to the small of her back again. Her eyes were dark and wary. "I don't need charity," she said. Cole swung down from his saddle without answering. He untied the rope from his saddlebag, walked to her wagon, and lashed it to the harness point. Then he grabbed the timber she'd been fighting and started hauling it toward the cabin. "I said, I heard what you said." Cole positioned the log against the frame. "You need a crossbeam here before the next snow, or your whole north wall will fold." She stood there, hands on hips, breathing hard. Her face was lean and weathered, probably 40. Maybe younger, hard to tell when life had worn someone down. But her eyes were sharp. "Why?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." Cole straightened and looked at her directly. "My name's Cole Dawson. I live 3 miles east with my 2 kids. My wife died 2 winters back, giving birth to our 3rd. Baby didn't make it either." Something shifted in her face. "Left me with 2 kids and a silence I couldn't break." Cole continued. "Worked myself half to death just to avoid going home to it. Took me a year to remember how to talk to my own children." The wind picked up. Dark clouds were gathering over the western ridge. "They say I shamed this town," the woman said quietly. "You'll be judged too if you're seen helping me." "Let them talk. You don't understand. They can make life hard." Cole looked at her calloused hands, at the half-built cabin, at the determination in her shoulders. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Ruth Winslow." "Well, Ruth Winslow, we got the same thing. I reckon. Grief and a roof to finish." He held out his hand. "So are we going to stand here talking, or are we going to work?" She studied his face for a long moment. Then she took his hand, brief, firm. Calloused palm against calloused palm. "Just the roof. she said. Nothing else, just the roof. They worked until dark. The first snow began to fall as Cole rode home. Neither had spoken more than necessary measurements, angles, where to place the next beam. But the pact was made. A man's word is proved by his actions, not his talk. His father's voice again. Cole looked back once. Ruth was still working by lantern light, hammering in the snow. The town had already decided Ruth Winslow's fate before Cole walked into Harrison's store. It was Saturday morning, 3 days after he'd started helping her. The store smelled of coffee and sawdust, the pot-bellied stove radiating heat against the cold. Mrs. Patterson and Preacher Michaels stood near the counter, voices low but not low enough. That woman, Mrs. Patterson was saying, sent her husband to his death in those mines, all because she wouldn't accept reasonable help. Pride before the fall, the preacher agreed. Warren Kent's son offered her a good home, and she refused. Cole moved down the aisle, picking up nails, not looking at them. Hope and Tommy waited by the door, mittened hands clasped together. Some women don't know their place, Mrs. Patterson continued. Now she's alone and she'll freeze before spring. Mark my words. Cole brought his supplies to the counter. Harrison rang them up without meeting his eyes. The door opened. Warren Kent stepped in, brushing snow from his coat. He was a big man, 50s, with cold eyes that assessed value in everything they saw. He owned the bank, half the businesses, and most of the debt in town. He saw Cole and smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Dawson, heard you've been spending time out at the Winslow claim. The store went quiet. Helping her finish her cabin, Cole said evenly. Noble of you. Warren moved closer. But you're making a mistake. That woman's poison. Destroyed her own husband with her pride and ambition. Now she'll take down anyone fool enough to stand near her. Hope tugged Cole's sleeve. Papa, Miss Ruth gave me a biscuit yesterday. She's nice. Warren's smile tightened. Children don't understand these things. Maybe they understand better than we do. Cole said, You risk your reputation for a woman who destroyed her own husband. Cole picked up his supplies. I risk nothing but your opinion. Kent. And I don't bank there anyway. The words hung in the air. Mrs. Patterson gasped. The preacher's face flushed. Cole walked to the door, children in tow. Before stepping out, he turned back. Ruth Winslow's coming to Sunday dinner at my place tomorrow. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. The store erupted in whispers as the door closed behind them. Stand or fall with what's right, the land remembers what folks forget. Another of his father's sayings. And Cole held on to it as they walked to the wagon. Papa, Tommy asked, are people mad at us? Cole lifted him into the wagon bed. Some are, son. But that's their problem, not ours. Hope looked worried. Will Miss Ruth still come for dinner? I hope so, darlin'. I surely hope so. That night, Cole lay awake wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life, or the first right choice in 2 years. The cabin grew with them log by log, day by day, something broken learning to hold together. Sunday dinner happened despite the stares at church. Ruth sat between Hope and Tommy at Cole's table, her hands folded in her lap like she didn't quite believe she was allowed to be there. The children filled the silence with chatter about school, about the barn cat's new kittens, about anything and everything. Cole watched Ruth smile. It transformed her face, softened the hard edges that grief and judgment had carved there. Miss Ruth, Hope said, can you teach me to read better? Mama used to help me. But Ruth's hand covered Hope's. I'd be honored. That became their rhythm. Ruth came for dinner twice a week. She taught Hope to read by firelight, sounding out words from Sarah's old books. She showed Tommy how to measure lumber, how to check if a cut was square. The children adored her. The town noticed. Store credit was denied to Ruth. Church ladies turned their backs when she entered. Warren Kent's influence spread like frost, cold and creeping. But the cabin kept rising. Cole framed the walls while Ruth chinked the gaps with mud and moss. Their hands brushed passing tools. Eyes met over measurements. Small moments that felt larger than they should. "You're good at this," Ruth said one afternoon, watching him set a rafter. "My father was a carpenter. Taught me young. Mine was a dreamer." She smiled sadly. "Died chasing gold that wasn't there. Left my mother with nothing but stories." "Is that why you wanted your own land?" "I wanted something real. Something I could touch and know it was mine." She looked at the rising walls. "My husband understood that. He just ran out of time." Cole climbed down from the ladder. They stood close in the small space, sawdust floating in the afternoon light. "I forgot what it feels like," Ruth said quietly. "Being part of something." "So did I." Cole's voice was rough. "Reckon it's like riding hurts at first. Then you remember." She looked up at him. For a moment, neither moved. Then hope called from outside, and the moment broke. That evening, they planted wildflower seeds along the cabin's south wall. Ruth's idea. "For spring," she said, pressing seeds into the cold earth. "If it comes, it'll come," Tommy said confidently. "It always does." Cole watched Ruth smile at his son, and something in his chest loosened a knot he'd been carrying for 2 years, finally beginning to unravel. Every good thing worth having comes the hard way. As they worked, he wondered if maybe the hard way was the only way worth traveling. The storm hit like God's fist 3 days that would seal their fates. Cole had ridden out early to help Ruth finish the roof before the weather turned. By noon, the sky was black. By evening, snow fell so thick they couldn't see 10 feet. The children were with them, had been helping, and now they were trapped. The cabin had walls and most of a roof, but gaps remained. Wind screamed through them. Cole stuffed blankets in the worst spots while Ruth built up the fire. Hope and Tommy huddled together under every spare coat they had. "We'll be all right," Cole told them. "Storm will pass." But it didn't pass. It howled through the night and into the next day. Snow piled against the walls. The temperature dropped until their breath froze in the air, even near the fire. Supplies dwindled. They rationed the food Ruth had stored: dried beans, a little salt pork, flour for bread. Cole melted snow for water. The children stayed brave. But he saw fear in their eyes when the wolves started howling the second night. The animals circled beyond the firelight, eyes glinting in the darkness. Cole checked his rifle, kept it close. Ruth sat with the children, telling them stories to drown out the howling. The third night, the fire burned low. They were running out of wood. Most of it was still outside, buried under snow. They huddled together, sharing warmth. Hope slept between Ruth and Tommy. Cole sat with his back against the wall, rifle across his knees. "Cole," Ruth's voice was quiet, meant only for him. "If we don't make it, we'll make it. But if we don't—" She paused. "Thank you for seeing me as something other than what they said I was." He looked at her across the dim firelight. "What did they say? That I killed him? That I sent my husband to die in those mines because I wouldn't settle for less? Wanted our own land, not Warren Kent's charity?" Her voice cracked. "Maybe they're right. Maybe if I'd just accepted, don't." Cole's voice was firm. "Don't let their poison into your head." "How do you bear it?" she asked. "The guilt." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I was out mending fences when Sarah needed me, came home to find her already gone, and the baby. I wasn't there when she needed me most. Spent a year drowning in that. Does it ever stop hurting?" "No." He met her eyes. "But it learns to share space with other things. Like this." Her hand found his in the darkness. Neither pulled away. They sat like that through the coldest part of the night. Two broken people holding on to each other while the storm raged and the wolves howled and the children slept. Between them, a portrait of something fragile trying to become family. Fire reveals what a man's made of and who'll stand beside him. Dawn broke on the fourth day. The storm cleared. Sunlight blazed across new snow, blinding and beautiful. Cole stood to check outside. He opened the door and found Warren Kent and Sheriff Morrison on horseback, their faces grim. "Dawson," the sheriff said, "we need to talk about your children's welfare." Ruth Winslow stood alone in the back while they decided her worth. The town hall was packed. Every bench filled, people standing along the walls. Oil lamps cast harsh shadows. The air smelled of wet wool and judgment. Warren Kent stood at the front, playing the concerned citizen. "We're not here to persecute anyone," he said, voice smooth as snake oil. "We're here to protect children." He laid out his case. Cole's children, exposed to immoral influence, staying overnight, unchaperoned, in an unfinished cabin with a woman of questionable character. He didn't call Ruth a whore, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. Ruth kept her spine straight. She'd known this was coming. Known it since the moment she'd taken Cole's hand that first day. The town didn't forgive women who wanted more than they were given. Preacher Michaels stood. "The Bible is clear about the appearance of evil. Brother Dawson, you're a good man, but you put yourself in a compromising position. Those children were in danger," someone called out. "The storm. The storm trapped them because Dawson was there in the first place." Warren cut in. Helping a woman rebuild when he should have been home with his family, Cole sat 3 rows ahead of Ruth. She could see the tension in his shoulders. Hope and Tommy sat on either side of him, holding his hands. They kept turning to look at her, confused and frightened. Warren turned to face Cole directly. "I'm not asking you to abandon her completely. Just step back. Let the church help her if she needs it. Focus on your children. Their future depends on your reputation." "Choose Dawson," someone called out. "Your children's future or that woman's ruin." The room went silent. Everyone watched Cole. He stood slowly. His hands shook. He looked at Warren, at the preacher, at the faces of his neighbors. Then he turned and looked at Ruth. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Hope and Tommy clung to his legs. Ruth saw the war in his face, saw him weighing his children against. What a woman he barely knew. A friendship that would cost him everything she understood. God help her. She understood. His mouth opened. No words came. The silence stretched like a rope pulled too tight. Ruth stood. Every head turned toward her. "It's all right," she said quietly. "Mr. Dawson has been kind. But Mr. Kent is right, his children come first." She walked toward the door, head high, eyes dry. She'd cried all her tears years ago. She had none left for this. "Miss Ruth." Tommy's voice. Small and breaking. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. A coward dies 1,000 deaths. A brave man only one. Ruth stepped into the cold night air and let the door close behind her. She'd survived worse than this. She'd survived this too, alone, the way she always had been. Cole Dawson knelt at his wife's grave and asked forgiveness he didn't deserve. 3 days had passed since the town meeting. 3 days of silence from Hope, of Tommy crying himself to sleep, of Cole staring at the ceiling, wondering how he'd become the kind of man who stood silent while a good woman walked away. He'd tried to see Ruth twice, both times. She wouldn't answer the door. He could hear her inside, working by single candlelight, hammering and sawing with desperate energy. "You made your choice," she'd called through the wood. "I respect it. Now leave me be." So he'd left. And now he knelt in the snow beside Sarah's grave, a bottle half empty beside him, asking a dead woman to tell him how to live. "I failed her," he said to the weathered stone. "Just like I failed you. That self-pity you're drowning in your wife give you permission for that." Cole looked up. Old Moses stood 10 feet away, leaning on his walking stick. He was the oldest man in town, had been there before there was a town, spoke truth whether folks wanted to hear it or not. Go away, Moses. Not until you hear what you need to hear. Moses moved closer. Boy, grief don't give you permission to be a coward. I'm protecting my children. You're teaching them to abandon people who need them. That what you want them to learn. Cole's hands clenched. I can't lose them again. If the town turns on me, if they take my kids, you already lost them. Moses' voice was hard. Your daughter won't speak to you. Your boy cries for a woman who showed him more kindness in 2 weeks than this whole damn town showed her in. 2 years. What was I supposed to do? Stand up. Moses slammed his stick against the ground. Like your father taught you, like you taught them children. You think your wife loved you because you played it safe? Cole's vision blurred. She loved me because I was there. No, she loved you because you were brave. What would she say now? Seeing you like this, Cole broke. The sob came up from somewhere deep, somewhere he'd locked away after Sarah died. She'd tell me to live, but I don't know how. Moses was quiet for a moment. Then, start by carrying that woman home. Cole looked up. What? Ruth Winslow. She's been working 3 days and nights without rest. She'll kill herself before she admits she needs help. Moses turned to leave. The bravest thing a man can do is stand after he's been knocked down. Question is, you gonna stand? Or you gonna die kneeling here? Cole stared at the grave, then at the town beyond, then at his own hands, still shaking. He stood. The ride to Ruth's claim was the longest 3 miles of his life. When he arrived, the cabin was dark except for a single lantern burning inside. He could hear hammering weak, irregular, desperate. He kicked the door open. Ruth was on the floor, hammer in hand, trying to nail down a floorboard. She looked up, face flushed with fever, eyes glassy. Leave, she whispered. Cole crossed the room and lifted her into his arms. She was burning up, light as a bird, shaking with exhaustion and cold. No, she said weakly. Your children are at home waiting for you. Cole said, because I'm done being a coward. She tried to protest, but the fever took her. She went limp in his arms. Cole carried her out to his horse and rode home through the darkness. Hope and Tommy were waiting on the porch. They ran to him, crying, and helped him bring Ruth inside. They tended her through the night-cool cloths, broth, blankets. Hope held her hand. Tommy brought her water. Near dawn. Ruth's fever broke. She woke to find them all there, Cole asleep in the chair beside her bed. The children curled up on the floor nearby. She looked at Cole. He opened his eyes. Why now? She asked. He moved to kneel beside the bed. Because I was wrong. Because my children were right. Because standing with you is worth more than standing with them. They'll destroy you. Let them try. He took her hand. I'd rather be judged with you than safe without you. A tear slid down her cheek. You're a fool, Cole Dawson. Yes, ma'am, but I'm a fool who's finally standing. Cole Dawson walked into that church with Ruth Winslow on one arm and his children flanking the other, and the world held its breath. It was Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows like judgment made visible. Every pew was packed. Every head turned as they entered. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Mrs. Patterson clutched her Bible. The preacher froze mid-sentence. Warren Kent stood from his pew, face red. You bring shame into God's house? Cole didn't stop walking. He led Ruth and the children to a pew in the center, not the back, not hiding, but right where everyone could see. Dawson, this is outrageous! Warren started. Cole turned to face the congregation. His voice was steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. Judge her for loving a dead man, for wanting her own land, for surviving when this town tried to bury her. He looked at Warren. Then judge me too. Because I loved a dead woman so long I forgot how to love the living. I let grief turn me into a ghost. And this woman, he gestured to Ruth, she reminded me how to be alive. The church was silent. She's worked harder than most of you, survived more than any of you. And you call that shame? Cole's voice cracked. The only shame here is how we treat people who don't bow to our expectations. Brother Dawson, Preacher Michael said uncertainly, you must understand the position. I understand that Christ ate with sinners and told the righteous they were hypocrites. Cole interrupted. I understand that he defended a woman the town wanted to stone. Seems to me, we're the ones who forgot what he taught. Warren stepped into the aisle. This is blasphemy. This is truth. Old Moses stood from the back row, his voice carrying, and it's about time someone spoke it. Mrs. Doyle, an elderly widow, stood next. Her voice shook. I was cruel to you, Ruth. I listened to gossip instead of looking at your heart. Forgive me. Another woman stood, then another. Not everyone, not even half, but enough to break Warren's hold. A man's character shows when he stands alone and when he stands for others. Cole extended his hand to Ruth in front of everyone. She looked at it, at him, at the faces watching them. She took his hand. This time, neither let go. Warren Kent stared at them, fury and disbelief warring on his face. Then he turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Preacher Michaels stood at the pulpit, looking lost. Then he cleared his throat. Welcome home, Sister Ruth, he said quietly. It wasn't much. It wasn't forgiveness from everyone. But it was a start. Hope squeezed between Cole and Ruth, taking both their hands. Tommy pressed against Ruth's other side. They sat together as the service began, four people who'd been broken, now holding each other up. Outside, spring was coming. Inside, something new was being born. Spring came like a promise kept slow, steady, undeniable. Ruth's cabin stood complete by April. The roof was tight. The door hung straight. The chimney drew clean. Along the south wall, wildflowers bloomed where she'd planted seeds in the frozen ground. Months ago, purple and yellow and white, bright against weathered wood. Hope and Tommy ran between Cole's house and Ruth's cabin like they'd always had two homes. They called her Miss Ruth with reverence and love. When Tommy scraped his knee, he ran to her first. When Hope had nightmares, she wanted Ruth's stories. The town wasn't perfect. Some still whispered. Some turned away. But the cruelty had lost its teeth. Warren Kent had left for Denver, his influence gone with him. The store owner extended credit again. Neighbors nodded in greeting. Small mercies. Small victories. Cole and Ruth worked side by side most days. His barn needed repairs. Her well needed digging. His fence needed mending. They moved around each other with easy familiarity now. Hands touching without hesitation. Smiles coming quick. One morning in early May, they sat on the porch of her cabin, watching the children play in the wildflowers. The sun was warm. The air smelled of grass and possibility. I never thought I'd have this again, Ruth said softly. Cole looked at her. Have what this family, home, the feeling that tomorrow might be good. She turned to him. I thought that part of my life was over. So did I. He took her hand, calloused palm against calloused palm. The same gesture that had started everything. Reckon grief don't leave, it just learns to share the saddle with something else. Like hope. Like hope. Like family. Like love. Maybe. If we're brave enough. Ruth leaned her head against his shoulder. I think we've been brave enough. Cole Dawson. Hope ran up, breathless and laughing. Papa, Miss Ruth. Look what Tommy found. She held out her hands, a bird's nest, fallen from a tree, 3 blue eggs nestled inside. "Can we keep them?" Tommy asked, face eager. "Can we help them hatch?" Ruth smiled. "We can try. Life needs protecting sometimes. And shelter," Cole added. "And patience. And love," Hope said firmly. They went inside together to find a safe place for the nest. The door stood open behind them, always open now, always welcoming. Smoke rose from the chimney, straight and strong into the blue sky. The land takes everything and gives it back when you prove worthy. That evening, as the sun set gold and orange across the plains, 4 silhouettes stood on the ridge above Ruth's cabin. Cole lifted Hope onto his shoulders. Ruth held Tommy's hand. They looked out over the land they'd fought to keep, the home they'd built, the family they'd become. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. But it was far away now, and the fire burned warm, and the door was open, and they were home. Finally, truly home.